of all, let me just tell you that before I was a university professor, I was in the public school system for 30 years, and I taught social sciences and English, and was a librarian. So I was a school librarian for about 25 of those 30 years. And then I have been teaching adjunct for the University of West Georgia, so I just moved there full time, and that's where I met my fellow presenter Danilo, Baylen, and I. And we seemed to hit it off, and we had a lot of things. We were both interested in visual literacy. Danilo's been a member, I think, for 25 years. So that's how we got together. And we came up with a little bit of a problem with a lot of our students. They would come to us, and I don't know how to put it. I'll categorize them. The undergraduates. They're on Facebook and they text, or they're on one of these private chat things now that isn't so private after all, they're finding out. But they can do all that, and they think they're very, very techy. And then it turns out that they're not very techy at all. For instance, if we wanted them to make simple changes in word processing, they couldn't do it. In other words, they knew how to get, they could go somewhere and get their citations made up. But they didn't know how to change it when the citation came to us and it wasn't correct according to what the university had their little, all universities have little finicky things about how they want certain things done. They didn't know how to change it. And so it was very interesting to us. Another thing they did, that one of the things in the technology courses was they had to be able to make simple changes in a spreadsheet. And even though we would give them the file with all of the things, they couldn't make the simple changes. So the undergraduates didn't know what they thought they knew. Then we get the graduate students who haven't been in school in a million years. They have PowerPoint, and they can do simple PowerPoints, but they don't know that you can make a banner, they don't know that you can make a poster, they don't know that you can make anything that could be informative for you, that you can use somewhere else. So that's where we were. And so that's how we got these people. They really didn't have the skill set that they needed to have. And they certainly didn't have the skill set that they needed to be in with our program. Because I was teaching people how to be school librarians, but they had to have technology to do certain things. He was teaching them how to use technology in education, and they couldn't actually use it. So that's how we did, and we sat down and we thought about some different things that we could do. They were not familiar with ISTE skills. Most of them hadn't even looked at the simple skills that teachers were supposed to do, let alone what students are supposed to be able to do. The next thing was they were unfamiliar with 21st century skills. So you can see we started to get a lot of reasons to do some specific projects with them. And then I would say that we had department standards, that if you're going to be in this program, when you leave this program, you can do A, B, C, D, which is typical of all universities, right, and programs. And then most importantly, they knew nothing about visual literacy. Thank you. I hope the internet is still there too. If it's not, well, so, okay, so let me just go back to the first slide. All right, because I'll feel a little bit better if I'm there. Okay. Slideshow. Boom. Okay. All right, so finally, when we got to the end of all of this, they didn't know anything about visual literacy at all. And so what we had to do is we had to take them from the bottom and try to move them up with every project we did. That's in essence how we had to do it. We felt like we were starting over with students who had done nothing, and that wasn't what we expected in that area. So that's why we did this project to start. All right? So the first thing we had to do was we had to now bring them into the fold, so to speak. And so what we did is we devised, and we sort of each went our own way on certain things, but they were ebooks, period. I had at that time been given a couple of courses, like twice a year I had some pre-service teachers, and then all my others were graduate students. So the range was really very different. So what we did is we are all online, completely online. So we scheduled lectures, and we actually actually gave them lectures showing them. And then I gave them a list of resources. I gave them where they could go for tutorials and that type of thing in order to help them through. All right, so the first thing we had to do was we had to show them what the standards were, because they didn't know. So what our project ended up being was, how can you incorporate a ton of standards from state, from ISTE, from the 21st century skills, all the way down through it? What can we find that can go into one project? And so I kind of went and looked at these things, and those were the 4 that I looked at the time. So I'm going to quickly go through these. I do know it's late in the day. I'm not going to insult you and read them all to you. So I'm going to leave them up for a few seconds, and I'm just going to go through them. And what I would tell you is these are the 21st century skills, and a number of them are there. And what we wanted them to realize is how many standards they can get from a lot of places for their own students when they're doing their own projects. That was another one of our goals. You will notice, as I do go through a lot of these, that there certainly is emphasis on ethical considerations, copyright, so forth, proper attribution, and you will see that they show up. Sometimes they show up twice. For instance, the bottom one here says it, and yet when we went over to a different set of skills, it was in there again under the 21st century skills. So it was very important for us to get that across. We didn't need to get that across with our graduate students, but our undergraduate students certainly did not understand the importance of it. And you can see right here under another set, under analyzing media, there again was that standard. So, I'm still in 21st century skills when we found all of these. They're right there, free for the taking, as I always say. Then I went to the arts just to see, and it's called outcome, not standards, and I think they may have just changed during this year, but at the time that we were working on this project, I went to 4th, 6th, and 8th. The standards were the same, in other words, the outcomes were the same. They just expected the students at 4th, 6th, and 8th to get better. All right? So we thought that they needed to be able to do at least what their students were supposed to be able to do. And so that was the purpose for moving to show them, all right, if your students have to do this, you have to do it too. So we kind of did a duel on the standards. So all of those were just in the arts. Then I went to the ISTE and I looked at the teachers, and I found a lot. If I combed through, I probably could have found a few more, but you know, I thought that this was pretty good. And a couple of them were really long here. I don't think it'd take too long to read them, but you get the idea of what we have. And I liked the model of the digital age work and learning. Model digital citizenship. So there again, you have the appropriate attribution and use of, and most importantly, engage in professional growth and leadership. Then I went to the Georgia Performance Visual Arts, and they all have about 500 words under each one of them, and I thought, no, that's too much. So I just took the main headings for them. And we saw that the project that we were giving them to do would actually hit every single one of those. So if they did these with their students, there would be no doubt that they would be able to get all of these skills covered. All right, so how did we do it? We scheduled the online sessions, and then we had specific sessions that they were actually required to attend, even though it was online. We had to make a few of them required. We did a small survey first, and that's how we knew that they knew nothing about visual literacy. Okay? So what we did is we had a lecture that we came up with about the principles of design and the elements of design. So right here you have the elements of design, and of course I didn't write in white space because white space is white space. And we talked to them about it when we did it. So we made a lecture about these. And just to show you the type of thing that we did, we put up samples and we did things, and I would never bore you with the whole lecture, of course. And then we moved, after we talked about those, we moved to the principles of design. because the elements all fit into the principles, right? And you notice I have contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And at our level, Dr. Baylen always gave out what he called crap awards, because you remember the so contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. But here was the kicker. He got really, really good results from his people because it was peer voting. He didn't vote, he didn't pick them, he didn't do anything. They wanted to win it on their own. So that's what was really cool. They wanted to win it on their own. And so they would compete, and it worked really well. And so I said, I'm giving out my crap awards tonight. Will you please attend class? People were just kind of luck, Now, you couldn't do that. I don't know. I guess if you were in the right situation, you could probably get away with doing it in high school, but probably not today. You would give carp awards, right? Carp, the fish. You just go the other way. Carp. We're giving out carp today. But anyway, so then we took them through and we would show them, all right, so if contrast is one of them, here's some ideas of what you can have contrast on. And we put that up to them. And then we would give them some examples. And then we moved to repetition. And we gave them some examples, and of course we talked about each of these things as we went through them, of course, which I wouldn't do to you. And then we talked about alignment, and where the strongest lines are, and how symmetry is sometimes good, but asymmetry is usually more visually pleasing to the eye, and so forth and so forth. And so we did that. And then finally we got to proximity. How does this fit in with the others? And so we would show them some different aspects of proximity and talk about that in the lectures. So that's how we sort of introduced the topics. And then we went on with a little bit more, trying to talk a little bit about how visual literacy probably came first. We think of the cave drawings and things like that. And what we do to decode visuals and learn about them and how we make sense of them. And how it can promote thinking. So we just kind of gave them a lecture about that, moved that in there, and we actually had 2 required lectures on the subject so that it didn't go on forever. Okay? All right. So I'll show you a few, and I'm just going to kind of run in this. What we did afterwards at the end was, okay, they got it, they figured it out, we've given them the lectures, and then after we showed them a few ebook examples, we would say, what else are you going to do with this? What else do all these visual literacy principles and elements of design, what do they apply to? And so we gave them a bunch more ideas, because we didn't want them thinking, one-dimensionally. All right. And then we gave a few more examples. And the only reason I put this one in here for you to see, and then we made them discuss the examples. I put this one in here because one fall term, my students wanted to do something that had to do with fall. So what I did is I took Molly Bang's Principles for Children's Books and Design. I took it, and one of my students sent me this and wanted to know, all right, so Dr. Goldberg, how would this fit? What can I get, and what I'm supposed to get out of the visual elements of design, principles of design? And so, of course, to me, it was contrast right away, right? Contrast. Repetition. Asymmetrical. And all these things, and yet it still fit into Bang's ideas of what is scary. What is scary to children? Children want to be scared, they just don't want to be scared too badly and too much. Right? But don't children love scary stories? Okay, so my students that term had done some scary stories. And this was just one that I kept simply to show how that person had thought. And if you talk about proximity, is that not in your face? That's in your face. And the story that she did was, she did a verbal retelling of it was a dark, dark night, all those things. Kids love those. And they've gone down the dark, dark road and the old dark, dark house and, all that stuff up there. And in the dark, dark closet, boom, out came this hand. Well, the next one is the father, and he's got this thing on his hand. So it was really very effective, and the kids loved it. So we showed them a few pictures, and then we made them tell us, all right, how many elements of design are in here? How many principles of design? What can you find? And these are a few that I used. I have permission to use them, otherwise they wouldn't be in here. So we made them talk to us about that. So we showed a few and they talked to us about that. And then what we did is we basically, that was it. So we gave them their assignment. We gave them instructions. We told them what to do. We gave them tutorials to find things and so forth. Now, a few of these, let me show you this. They had to do 2. Dr. Baylen used the rubric. I used a checklist. His students had to make a storyboard. My students had to make a concept map. All right? And we wanted to see, okay, where are the differences? And then we ended up, we had to make a concept map. After we did this a few times, we learned we had to make a concept map before they made a storyboard. That way they didn't miss things. So that worked out really well. So that's what we did. Now, they each had to make 2 books. So this, and one of them could be anything they wanted, but it had to learn the skills of what they were going to do. Okay? So this one is nothing but an infomercial. This one right here. No, just started.
Hi guys, as many of you know, there are 10 teachers right here at Jones Middle School who are participating in the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer 3-Day Walk. That means we're going to walk 20 miles a day for 3 days. That's 60 miles in 3 days. Now you might think that we have lost our minds to do something like that. Why do we do it? Take a look at this.
So that's enough so you can see kind of how she did it. This was one of our students who virtually, that's her mom.
Some of you may have been her students.
That was one that she did just to learn the skills of what it was she was going to have to do. So she made an infomercial that was useful in her school because that is what they were doing and that is what they did. So when she finished that assignment, she applied it in her school. All of our assignments had to be applied in the school. So that's what she did with that one. And let me see, Barfield. Okay, and the one from Barfield, oops, no. Over here. See if we can get it back. Probably page, please. How about Van Gogh? Van Gogh was pretty good. She used it. All right, let's see if by any weird.
Monkeying Around. Story by Adam. Illustrations by Lily. PowerPoint created and narrated by Jessica Clark. You have 2 options. Your first option is to go at your own pace. With this presentation, you will have to click to go to the next page. You will also find that some of the challenging vocabulary is linked to definitions to better help you understand the meaning. Your second option is to allow the computer to set the pace for you. This means that you will not have to click the mouse at all. However, you should know that in this version, the challenging vocabulary is not defined.
Okay. Instructional.
Jump, 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 shouted the crowd. Soaring in the air, a boy takes a great leap forward, but misses his mark. Wake up, you have school today, said my mom. I got up from my bed and dragged myself to the shower. Then I tripped down the stairs, slamming my head into the wall. I decided to skip breakfast and head to school. After the long, tiring 7 hours that was a waste of my time, I had to go to Discovery Point Daycare. You see, my mom works hard to make money, so she usually works till 5 o'clock. So until she gets home, I have to stay at daycare. I play video games, board games, and play with my friends outside. That day, my friends and I saw a huge crowd circling the monkey bars. I sprinted up to the crowd and asked, "Hey guys, what is going on here?" "A monkey bar jumping contest," years on years, it was my turn. Getting up on that stool was like being on top of the world. Preparing myself for my great leap, I made a running start. Waiting until the last possible second, I made my random leap for a bar. I felt like all time had proceeded to a halt, floating endlessly in time until my hand touched a bar. My hands started acting all of my own. They seized hold of the bar and my body thrust forward as time came back into place. Then sound came back and I heard cheers. When I opened my eyes, I thought they were lying. The kids circling the monkey bars were cheering and calling me champion. I looked up. What my hands had gripped all by themselves was the last bar. My hands finally released their grip. I landed on the wood chip floor.
Okay, I'll stop that one. If I had made the other choice, it went slowly. The words from the vocabulary that they had to know were highlighted. They could click on it and they got a definition of it. But that's not in this particular version. I wanted to do the quick one. I'm sorry the other ones didn't come up. The Van Gogh one displayed everything that she needed at the end of the term, including embedded video that came from 3 different sources about Van Gogh, and they were used instructionally. So that was it. That was what we did. It worked very well. Not only did we get all their skills in, they learned a lot. You know, there's no other way to say it. From people who ended up coming to our program as novices, when they finished the class, they really learned a lot of skills, and we were pleased. Now, we had different projects for different things, but in particular, this is the one that just ran into one of my students at the High Museum a couple weeks ago in Atlanta. She said, and she said, and you know what? I got my students making them, and what she did is she had her older students make them for the elementary school. They found out what the teachers needed and wanted. She had her older students, because she was doing multimedia in one of her art classes in high school. She had them make specifically for the teachers, and the students would meet with the teachers, and they did a collaborative project. So they're being used plenty, which shows something that's worthwhile. Now, one of the reasons that we talked to them about this, and I should have stated this in the beginning, is when we have found that when we have students that are autistic, dyslexic, ADHD, you know how they need to repeat it more times, and they need more. They can have these online, and students can go to them, so the teacher doesn't have to repeat everything. So they can go and they can review everything without the teacher. And so we found that that was an excellent use of it that we had never thought of at the beginning. And that's proven to be very successful for our students. So I do have a couple of handouts here. Are there any questions? I'm bringing this up here. Are there any questions at all? I want to thank all of you for staying. It's really very nice of you all. What I have here is Molly Bang's 10 principles, in case you would ever think of embarking on a project. And then this was just kind of the written up notes of what I had my students, where they could go and what they could look at some things and get some different ideas about visual literacy things, stuff you lectured about but you don't want to over lecture about, and some other things that might give them some ideas. Like you, I think I have the ACRL standards in there and things like that. So I have several of these. I think I have enough, so if anybody who wants one comes up here, they're just crisscrossed up here. And you're more than welcome to them, to take them. And I really didn't use the book that's cited in here, but the department chair at the time that we had insisted we had to have a book. So I found something in the book that I could write up. And in my course, if they come and look at my course, well then here, see, here's the book. Anyway, as most of you know by now, if you wait for a technology book to get published, you know, it's 3 years in the making, and by then we've moved on to something else, or we do something in a different way. So there you have it. Are there any questions? I'm more than glad to. It was one of the more fun projects that our students always talked about at the end of the program, so that was good. When they left us, they said, oh, and I really used what I did in, you know, whatever section it was. That always makes you feel good, because sometimes you never know. You try to hit a note, but you don't know if you're hitting it. So, okay, well, thank you very much.
For those that are interested,